Kyle, what's up, brother?
Ryan, so happy to be here, man.
I am too. It's pretty cool to be able to sit down with you, just knowing a little bit about your story and get to know you over the past. Well, we met at Summer Strong, so what's that? Like 4 months or so
Mm-hmm.
ago, roughly.
Yeah.
So how's things been, man? You're on a quite a journey with the new book launch. When does the book come out?
October
I
15th.
should have known that before we started.
Ah, no worries, man. No worries.
So
But
it's coming up.
you're right. It's been a journey, and even just the past few weeks, it could be looked at as a short-term journey. Finally finishing it, getting ready for all the media stuff and the launch.
Yeah.
But really, journey started years ago, 2 years ago, writing, and then before that, a lot of what I talk about in the book and the lessons that I try to convey. I spent many, many years thinking about how I could write a book that transcended all boundaries. That
Mm.
wasn't just a book that someone that has been in the military or been in combat can relate to. I wanted, to write something that anyone and everyone could not only pick up and read, but understand and take lessons from. So it is surreal that I finished it and it's complete, and it turned out, more amazing than I could have ever hoped for. So I'm very thankful that I was able to do this and write this book.
Could you have imagined you being in this situation even 5, 6, 7 years ago? I mean, think about how far you've come and where you're at right now. I mean, just to see, and obviously we're going to get into your story and your life, but to see where you came from to where you are now, I mean, it's pretty inspiring. So I can't imagine somebody won't be inspired by what you share in your story and your words.
Well, thank you. And yeah, even though I went through it and I experienced all of the things I have, good and bad, in the hospital and out, uh, even though it's my journey, it still almost seems unreal and very surreal at times. But, I'm thankful to still be here and still have the opportunity to kind of keep figuring out life and living life one day at a time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's back up because, I mean, you've obviously had some very unique things happen to you in your life. I commend you for what you've made of them because I think there's a lot of opportunity for somebody potentially in your situation to self-destruct in a lot of ways and go down a path that maybe doesn't serve them or anybody else well, but you haven't taken that path. You joined the Marines. Were you in high school when you joined?
I was not shortly after high school. I
Okay.
graduated high school in 2008. Went to boot camp March of 2009.
Okay, yeah, because I thought I had seen somewhere it was like a delayed entry program or something like that, and so I was like, well, maybe he joined when he was high school, finished up high school, and then went into boot camp.
Yeah, the delayed entry program for a little while, but depending on when you join and the need for more troops and bodies, I was just thankful that I didn't have to, sit around in the debt program for a year or so. What a lot of people have to do.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So it was fairly quick then for you.
yeah, just a few months,
Yeah.
and that's good because I was a little impatient.
What made you decide to join the military?
um, I just wanted to do something bigger than myself or any one individual, and you know, maybe not my only, but my biggest fears in life uh, is regret and unfilled potential.
Mm.
And so I didn't want to wake up one day and not only have missed the opportunity to join and to serve, but miss the opportunity to uh, feel deep down inside that I committed myself, my body, and my life to a greater purpose and to
Mm.
other people.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Did you have family that was in the military? Like, where did that idea even spur from? Because I mean, you could have went a bunch of different ways, right? And still maybe fulfilled what you're talking about.
Yeah, so my mom's dad was in the Navy, but
Okay.
he died unfortunately when I was very young.
Mm.
So, you know, um, kind of take him out of the picture, I guess, and no one else in my family
Mm.
has ever served or is a veteran. And so, yeah, I could have gone many different routes, but, and I think one of the things at the heart of why I joined, besides the reasons that I told you, is, you know, I've always been into sports, challenging myself, whether it is sitting in the recliner when I was really young, trying to master blowing bubbles with gum with my dad, or, striving for that next touchdown or putting that next big 45-pound plate on the weight bar. So I've always loved challenge and gladfully accepted challenge. But I had never been pushed to the point of physically and mentally wanting to quit.
Yeah.
I had never been pushed so hard that I really had to, dig and look down deep inside me. And I wanted something to do that. And I knew that was not only the military, but after research, talking to people, and, I went to multiple different branches and recruiters. But, after I got that full picture, I knew that the Marine Corps was the path that was meant for me. And I knew that the Marine Corps would give me what I was searching for.
Yeah. Did you feel like you got that in boot camp and more, probably?
And a lot more.
Yeah, I bet. Was that a wake-up call for you? Like, what did I do? Or were you into it?
Both.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
So you think it starts at boot camp.
Yeah.
And then you get about a mile outside of the gate. You're on this bus with all of the other nasty recruits going to Parris Island. And you're about a mile outside the gate, and the bus driver, who has done it many times, I'm sure, he tells you to put your head down in between your legs. You're thinking, like, okay, like what's going on here? And then you learn that it is because if you ever go crazy or try to run away and escape from Parris Island, you won't know or be familiar with the one little windy road.
Is that
and
true?
The only way in and off of Parris Island through the swamps and all of the sand fleas and sand gnats. So,
is that true?
Yeah, that's true. So head down in between my legs. I kind of had that thought of, what did I get myself into before I even had the van door ripped open by one of the scariest human beings I've ever seen. But you get out, and even though you're thinking, what have I done? You're terrified. No one's ever screamed at you like that.
Yeah.
You get out and you stand on those famous yellow footprints.
Mm-hmm.
And even though everyone has different haircuts, you don't have your uniforms yet. I mean, you are fresh off the bus, but you still get in that forced, but for the first time in your life, that structured military formation. And, going into boot camp, I knew I wasn't going to quit.
Mm-hmm.
But I tried to, just get in the mindset of, okay, when I do get pushed to that limit, whether physical, mental, or emotional, kind of just whatever comes my way, not only will I not quit, but how do I want to handle myself?
Mm.
And
you were thinking about that even before the fact, is what you're saying.
Yes, because you hear the horror stories,
of course,
and the beautiful lessons that come from Marine Corps boot camp. So I knew those moments were inevitable. So, I knew I didn't know what I was getting into, and I couldn't adequately prepare or expect or know most of the stuff that I was going to be exposed to. But I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be very challenging mentally or physically. And so I just got in the mindset of, not only am I not going to quit, but what am I going to learn about myself? And I was curious how far and hard I could push myself.
Yeah. Did you learn things about yourself that you didn't previously know? I mean, you said you were an athlete. I went to basic training when I was 18 years old. Similar situation. I played sports. I had coaches that pushed me, and I did the thing. I saw a bunch of guys who had never experienced any of that really struggle. I
Hmm.
thrived in basic training because I had that experience.
Yeah.
But I did learn things about myself that I didn't know were there. Did you feel that same way?
Um, I learned, well, I learned what I set out to do or why I joined in the first place.
Mm,
I learned and experienced and felt what it was like for, really the first time, besides my family and very intimate things like that. But for the first time, I really learned and realized and felt what it was like to be a part of a group of people and an organization that is greater than any one individual.
mm,
And not only that, you know, I learned what it felt like deep down inside to value the person to the right and left of you as much as yourself and as
mm.
much as your own life. And maybe uh, at that point, you're very motivated and hyped up on
Sure, yeah.
Marine Corps and boot camp and all these things. So, maybe you're not at the point just 13 weeks into it that it's automatic, hey, I'm going to lay down my life for someone, or I'd gladly do that. Because none of us really ever know. But to be taught those lessons about, former Marines, heroic Marines that were told that, hey, if you make it to this beach during World War II, you'll probably still only have about 20 seconds to live. At
That's
18,
crazy.
19, 20 years
So
old,
crazy.
they still charged ahead.
Yeah.
The Marines that, froze to death at the Chosin Reservoir in Korea, those Marines that fought so heroically and put others above themselves in the fields of Vietnam that most people have never heard of, can't pronounce, don't know where it is on a map. And so, to hear all of those things, just even though it was the beginning steps, it laid the foundation for not only what I learned about the Marine Corps and what it was to be a Marine, but what it truly means to serve and do something bigger than yourself.
Hmm. To what degree do you relate with or even identify with some of the heroes that you're talking about? Because I know what I think. I think you're a hero, but I don't know if you think that. I'm curious. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. Maybe there's somewhere on the range of heroism that you feel like you're on. I don't know.
Well, I appreciate that, Ryan. Uh, I would say I'm very proud of what I did and the Marine that I was when I was still wearing that uniform and on that deployment in Afghanistan. But if you look at what happened to me and my story, what happened because I was put in a unique situation or circumstance. And I truly do feel like, if there were 100 other Marines that were put in that position, they would have done the same thing for me because we got taught those same values, those same lessons, and the same history about the Marine Corps and all the Marines that had covered grenades for their fellow Marines that were around them before. And so, you know, I think that everyone that voluntarily chooses a path in life where they, on their own, walk into a recruiting station and raise their right hand to give up to their life for their country. I mean, you know that, but for any veterans or people listening, I mean, think how really amazing and powerful that is. You're not only saying, send me, but you're saying, I love and believe in this country, my fellow countrymen and women, and helping people around the world so much that if it comes to it, I'm privileged to leave this earth at 18, 19, 20, all the way up to, 40, 50 years old for those that stay in an entire career. So I'm just privileged and honored and very proud to be a part of a group and an organization and a military where every single person has done that. So will I accept hero? Sure. I'm very honored. Thank you. I appreciate it. But everyone else did the same thing as me. Everyone did it.
I don't know if they would, man. I don't know. I mean, what I'm hearing you say is that it's conditioned, right? But I imagine partly it is, no doubt, right? You drink the Kool-Aid, if you will.
Yeah.
But it's more than that. It's got to be more than that. Because I don't think everybody would do what you did. Even those who voluntarily raised their hand and said, I will lay down my life for this cause, for this country, for my brothers. I don't think everybody would do what you did. I'm not challenging what you think about it.
Yeah, no, I know.
I'm just curious. You know what I'm saying? It's
yeah,
like,
absolutely. I know. And thankfully, and frustratingly, and kind of the crazy thing is, I might not ever have an answer to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing, right? Is that not everybody's going to be in that situation.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. But if I had to elaborate any more and really truly look into it, say everybody wouldn't have done that. I think that, my parents, the way I was raised, the amazing friends and influential people and mentors, my drill instructors, my high school teachers, my coaches throughout high school, whatever sport I was playing, everyone has relationships and everyone comes across people in their life that maybe they knew, they didn't know. It was just completely by chance circumstance.
Sure.
Everybody goes through life. But, it's up to us to take things from people, good and bad. You see someone, littering out here in the parking lot, makes you feel bad. I don't ever want to do that. I'm going to teach, my kids, hopefully, whenever I get blessed with kids, not to litter. You see someone holding the door for someone, being kind to someone. You can choose to learn from that. And then you can not only choose to learn from that, but apply it to your own life. So, looking back, I do realize that anytime I interact with people, even if it's just a casual conversation, I try to take something from them. And I think having amazing, loving family and friends and that entire support system that I just went through, I feel like my foundation allowed me to make a decision that was so loving for someone else that, and I don't remember seeing the grenade or thinking about it. And, as you know, when the pin's pulled and it's thrown, 3 to at the very most 5 second,
Sure.
fuse. And so, who knows if I thought about it, but if I was able to think about it, or even if it was just reflexive, I think the foundation of just good people that helped make me who I am, allowed me to step up in that moment of need.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. let's talk about your deployment. Let's talk about that so we can get some context of what it is we're addressing here. So you get done with boot camp,
Mhm.
and then I imagine you have some sort of specialized training. Is that right? Outside of boot camp? Is that
Yeah,
how that
so
works?
after
Okay.
the 13 weeks of boot camp, we have a little over 2 months
Okay.
of what's called School of Infantry.
Okay.
And that was for those that joined specifically in the infantry
Sure.
'03 field. Uh,
03 is infantry.
correct.
Okay.
And then the next two numbers designates
Your
basic
specialty. Your,
rifleman,
ah,
weapons guy, mortarman, assaultman, things like that.
right.
And so all other Marines in the Marine Corps do kind of like a 2-week expedited SOI just to
Mhm.
get the basics of combat, how to dig fighting holes, all of these things. And, but that was our job. So we went straight from boot camp to School of Infantry.
Okay.
After School of Infantry is a terrifying moment where, Camp Lejeune is right down the road
Yeah.
from Camp Geiger.
Okay.
And so these combat hardened seasoned Marines, not even wearing skivvy shirts, which I didn't even know was allowed to not wear under the uniform.
That's not an option here.
Full sleeve tattoos. Just, they get on a bus and they come pick you up. And right there, right after graduation from SOI, they group you up. Hey, you're going to 2-9, you're going to 3-6. See ya. And you go straight from there on the bus through the gates of Camp Lejeune, and you move into your barracks room.
Is that right?
And you from the second you move in, you start either training or deploying and running and gunning. And probably the scariest moment out of my whole career is we were in barracks known as French Creek on Camp Lejeune. And these things, hopefully they're not still open and operating, because we had exit
hazards.
signs for sure, who knows, exit signs hanging down by wires out of the ceiling. Just infantry Marines have been living there for many years.
Sure.
And it was one of the few barracks that were left where everything was internal, all the rooms, like a hotel, and then all
right.
the newer barracks rooms are on the outside, which is not good if you are a new, fresh out of SOI and boot camp Marine. And we get there, and okay, it's not so bad. There's not really that many Marines outside. Middle of the day, maybe they're off somewhere. We can kind of sneak in here under the radar and get destroyed later when they come back. Dude, open up that door to the barracks. Our whole platoon, who had just got back from Iraq, lining the inside of the hallways, just waiting to greet us. It was like I felt like their next meal, and they were just like caged dogs,
they were
just
so
waiting.
Excited.
Yeah.
So what was the initiation process? What was that like?
It wasn't like crazy physical stuff people think about.
Yeah.
It was just yelling and kind of verbally destroying you. Now, if you were squared away, if you prepared, because most of what you're doing, for weeks and months, while the first, few that you're in, they're giving you knowledge classes.
Sure.
Because even though you're a boot, you're a younger Marine, the new guy, whenever you do deploy together, which I think they keep in the back of their head that, hey, once we deploy, it's not the new guy anymore.
No,
I'm covering your back.
Right.
I'm this might be my first deployment, but I'm putting my life on the line just as much for you as you are me.
No doubt.
So it's a mutual respect, but at first, there are hours of classes a day, and this is just by our one rank up fire team leaders and the guys within our platoon. So as kind of hard and feeling like kind of degrading it is at times, it is amazing to kind of sit back and think, okay, this really sucks, but these guys are making me memorize my 9 line to call in medevacs. We're sitting here in the barracks hallway learning how to put tourniquets on. We're learning, we're sitting outside the barracks 4 or 5 hours. I'm taking apart my saw, putting it back together. Then we get good at it. We're all having races. Whoever does good might not get destroyed for the rest of the
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
So it was super tough, and they expected a lot out of you, but boot camp, you're kind of not going through the motions, but you're really just learning about our history, uniforms, what it's like to be a Marine, to carry yourself as a Marine. But when you hit the fleet and you're with those guys, it becomes real.
Yeah.
And so, you're doing things to better yourself, your platoon, and hopefully bring more of your guys back alive.
Sure.
So, an incredible experience. Luckily, we were only dog food for a few weeks because we bounced out on our first deployment very quickly.
And that was to Afghanistan?
Actually, Afghanistan was second.
Oh, okay.
Our first one was a little 3-month pump down through the Caribbean. No, we were not on vacay. We went down, stopped at Guantanamo Bay, did some training, and, obviously I don't know what to expect going to Guantanamo
Sure.
Bay.
Yeah.
But very rugged, mountainous, extremely hot. And so the terrain mixed with the heat, humidity, was a good environment and atmosphere for us to start what's called a workup.
Yep.
And so that was kind of kicking off our months-long training period to get us ready to go to Afghanistan. And so a few of our Marines kind of went off to the side, did their own thing. They helped train Dominican Republic forces on how to, get on and off helicopters, how to set up security perimeters, just basic stuff, collaborating with other nations. Really interesting and amazing kind of first deployment, being on a Navy ship. A few months ago I was in high school, and now I'm cruising through beautiful blue waters of the Caribbean, and I'm surrounded by, 20 helicopters on this flight deck, doing shooting drills right off the deck.
Is that
of the
right?
Oh, yeah.
That's cool.
It was awesome, man.
That is cool.
And so, but kind of the highlight, for good or bad, on that deployment was we're cruising back, coming home. We're trying to make it home by Christmas Eve of 2009. And word got passed around that President Obama was going to make, he's going to address the world.
Yeah.
And he was going to make a very big announcement. And so we huddled around this super small, half static ridden TV. And
you were on the ship at the time?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're all just like, smushed into this room in the bowels of this Navy ship. And we're watching this address, and President Obama gives the thumbs up and decides to send, I believe, a troop surge of 30,000 troops and allied forces into Afghanistan as maybe not a final push, but to really, increase and solidify efforts to continue fighting the Taliban and their, not only kind of terrorist activities within their country and around the world, but also, and what I think a lot of people miss in the big, mainstream media and political side of things, we were there helping people that are seriously oppressed.
Oh, yeah.
And truly,
No doubt.
truly struggling. I mean, it kind of surprises people when I say, to have a pair of old raggedy sandals on your feet, is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, talking to kids that through a translator would ask me, and I talk about this story in the book, but that would ask me, is everywhere in the world like Disney World? Or is everywhere in America like Disney World?
Oh.
And can you really just go into a room in your house and turn a magical knob and get fresh, clean drinking water? And what is school like? And just,
isn't that crazy?
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't think about that.
Absolutely. And we can go to our jobs, and we can focus on our jobs and not have to worry that we're going to come home and our family is going to be killed, stoned to death, or beheaded because you believe in something different than your next door neighbor, or you were caught reading a first grade level book. I mean, it's just so crazy. So, you know, no matter what the big picture reasons are, you know, go in there to help people. And so we knew when he gave that thumbs up that we were going to be one of the first units in line to push in Afghanistan.
Because you had already been in the process of training, you just got done with this, or wrapping up this current deployment. You're basically mission ready at this point.
Correct.
Okay, makes
Get,
sense.
getting mission ready and becoming more cohesive as a unit.
Sure,
you know, because even
yeah.
though we were on this deployment, we were still only 3 or 4 months into the real Marine Corps. And so, you know, I think probably our higher ups, obviously leaders throughout government and Department of Defense, probably knew what was coming down the pipeline, and that unofficially, without us knowing, kicked off that workup to start getting ready.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, we got back just in time for Christmas, spent a few days with the family on leave, and then started that 7-month workup.
Is that how long the workup is? 7 months?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and maybe longer, maybe shorter, depending on when
sure.
you're set to ship out. But July, we got on the buses, and it was very surreal to give my mom a hug and a kiss and get on the bus. And I had this moment where, you know, we're on a bus sitting outside the barracks in North Carolina, but I'm sitting there and I'm looking out the window, and I'm glad I did, because if I wouldn't have made it, I would have seen my mom for the last time. But I had never seen such a look of true despair on her face. Just completely at a loss emotionally and deep down inside of what to do. I mean, her oldest son is going and being inserted by helicopter into the worst little, 50 square mile patch of farmland in southern Afghanistan, where the Taliban is essentially making one of their last strongholds. Protecting, those acres and acres and miles and fields of drugs that fund all of these activities.
Is that what it was? They were growing their crops there?
Yeah. So I talk about this in the book, but I believe in 2011, a study done by the UN, you go anywhere in the world, pick up heroin off the street.
Yeah.
There's an 82% chance, I believe it was, that it originated, from that that little area.
And that's
in
where you
Afghanistan.
were. That's where you guys were stationed.
Correct. Yeah, in Marja, and so it was just
how many
fields of never-ending poppies.
How many guys went with you in your unit? That's probably not the right term, but how many guys went with you? Because when you were stationed where you were, it seems like there was only 9 or 10 of you. But I mean, I imagine a whole lot more of you went.
Correct. Yeah. In November 21st, when I was injured, there was only myself and my squad, which a squad is roughly 12 Marines,
right? Okay.
And a Navy corpsman, which is our medics,
right?
But for the 4 months of our deployment leading up to that operation where I was injured, we lived in a small mud compound in a village, myself and my platoon. And a platoon is roughly 60 Marines, broken down into 3 or 4 squads.
Right.
And so, but just...
so there was, you said roughly 60 of you?
Correct.
In the platoon?
Correct.
In a village?
Correct. Yeah.
Just living in their homes, or an abandoned home, or like how did that? Because when I was in Iraq, we had our FOBs, our forward operating bases, right? But these were secured locations. Now we were in the middle of Ramadi, surrounded, but it was still a secure operational base that had been established. Was it similar to that, or completely different?
Well, there was 60 Marines inside, so I think it was more secure than not. But, we were in this village. We were so far behind enemy lines and out in the middle of nowhere. Everything we needed through the whole deployment, bottles of water, food, ammo, sandbags to fill to try to protect ourselves from bullets and blasts. everything had to be brought in by helicopter.
Hmm.
There was, only dirt roads. There was no infrastructure,
Yeah, I bet.
no Humvees, no 7 tons, no vehicles could come down these roads for fear of collapsing off and turning over upside down in canals and
Wow.
possibly Marines drowning.
Yeah.
And so, but even with that said, man, sometimes a helicopter would come in to drop us supplies or the Osprey, and they would get so lit up
Really?
that they would have to kind of bail and come back at night and drop our stuff under nightfall. So, with that said, I mean, every day from sun up to sundown was a nonstop, vicious fight for our lives and fight for survival.
What was the objective?
So, your objective, as you know, depends on when you're going into that area or that country and kind of how you're fitting into the mission.
Mm-hmm.
The Marine Corps, we are strictly a combat element, if you will. We don't have our own medical branch like the Army and the
Mm-hmm.
Navy and the Air Force. So our mission was kind of first in, get rid of the bad guys, either push them out or eliminate them. And as we did that and expanded that presence, later on, once we kind of cleared the way, either other branches or other kind of jobs within the Marine Corps, engineers
Sure.
can come in and fill in behind you and start to build the foundational steps for the infrastructure that I was kind of alluding to earlier.
Right.
Roads,
All the logistical planning and everything else.
logistical
Right.
planning, getting water and not having to get water out of a, dirty well with an old gas can or dirty bucket. So,
That's crazy.
in a
So you
summarized
were
version, just literally going on foot patrol all day, every day. We would send out a morning patrol, late morning, early afternoon patrol, late afternoon patrol, and a night patrol every day. And as crazy as it sounds, really our only mission was to walk outside of those friendly lines, loaded down with as much ammo as we might need for a 3 or 4 hour firefight. And we would walk around until we got shot at, and we'd pick
And then
fights with the enemy. And that's how we would draw them out, and that's how we would either push them out or eliminate them to, give these people, some hope that maybe one day, they'll be able to wake up and taste freedom.
were the people in that village or in that surrounding area, what was the general consensus about us being there? Was it welcomed? Was it unwelcomed? Probably a mix of both.
A mix of both. I would say a lot more welcomed. But see, the trick is, and the difficult thing is, because of this, some of the things I've already said, these people are living in such constant fear that, you do get those kids and some of the adults you talk to that express that they're so happy to have us there.
Sure.
And they are so excited for, good things to come and maybe to have a school one day. But the vast majority of the population is so terrified to say anything
Mm-hmm.
because everything's so unconventional over there. One guy can be telling you he loves you, giving you a hug at the end of the day, offering you chai and tea and to eat with his family. The next day you're getting shot at, you wrap up the same guy, and he has gunshot residue, test positive that he's been shooting a weapon. And everyone over there has weapons, so
Yeah.
that might actually be true for defense, but everything's so unconventional. It's like the Taliban has eyes everywhere, and they might not know that or might not be 100% confident or feel safe enough to say anything. The Taliban's not wearing uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's difficult when you're dealing with the population that's so scared of the repercussions of trying to help their own country that they might not say anything, or they might not take up arms with you,
Right.
or
Right.
so it was a challenge, but I definitely think that the majority of people hoped for a better life.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what were you said you guys went out on these patrols. What was your rotation like? Like, how often would you go out on these foot patrols?
Great question. And actually, can I hit on one more point
Yeah, definitely.
and a story that kind of summarizes all of that
Yeah.
perfectly? So, middle of the night one night, hand grenade attack comes. Ironically, the grenade blew up, and at this point we had got tents. When we first got there, I mean, it was so primitive just because we were the first ones in there,
Yeah.
sleeping on the ground. For our whole 7-month deployment, we didn't have showers, but like months into it, around very end of November, December, we got tents. At that point, I'd already been injured and medevaced, but a grenade came over the wall in the middle of the night, and ironically blew up right next to the rack that I had been occupying 2 weeks before.
Really?
So
This is after your
yeah.
injuries. Oh my goodness.
So for some reason, I was a grenade magnet, but this grenade blows up. Obviously, middle of the night, no one sees anything. Don't know who threw it, where it came from. Fast forward a couple nights, this kid, middle of the night again, comes to the base.
Afghani kid, is that what
Correct.
you're saying? Okay.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Local kid from the village where
Okay.
we had been living and operating. And this kid, every time we had left on patrol, at least for the whole 4 months I was there, he would salute us.
Oh, really?
Always come up and talk to us, say what's up. We taught him how to, kind of do like a little dap up handshake. Cool kid. Comes to us in the middle of the night, and I get told this by my buddies later on, obviously. Comes to us in the middle of the night, hysterically crying. And before he even says anything, begging us not to kill him. Obviously, no matter what he tells us or what he could have possibly done, like, we'd never do anything physical.
Right, of course.
But, him being absolutely terrified, that's how he kind of laid the precedent. Followed by, he had told us a couple of times throughout the deployment where IEDs were buried. Because even though the Taliban might kind of hate their own people and the local population, people know, just like people know in their neighborhoods here in America,
right,
what's up and where IEDs are. And this kid a couple of times had told us where IEDs were, one of them extremely significant that would have injured or killed a lot of Marines. And, we always kept it under wraps, but I think just association of him, saying what's up to us, talking to us while we're on patrol, just being friendly with us.
Yeah.
And us mysteriously finding some of these IEDs, even though we have metal detectors, and if they don't plant the IED well, there's disturbed dirt.
Sure, you can see signs of it.
Exactly.
Right.
Maybe some type of association between this kid and us finding IEDs. So the Taliban comes into his home while he's sleeping, wraps him up in the middle of the night, takes him to the outside walls of our compound. And this kid's 11, 12.
Oh, my gosh.
Puts a hand grenade in his hand, pulls the pin, and gives them the ultimatum. Obviously, you either throw it or, this is it for you. And so he's the one that threw the grenade.
Oh.
Loving us, wanting that change, trying to help us for his country. So, thanks for letting me go back a little bit. But I think that story puts it into perspective.
Oh, 100%. I think about, my oldest son is 11 years old.
Yeah.
He will likely, a strong likelihood, never have to worry about anything even remotely close to that. That is absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think a whole lot of people recognize how much injustice there is in the world, because we're in this little bubble of safety and security. You know, the worst
Absolutely.
thing that's going to happen to somebody today is somebody's going to maybe cut them off on the road, or the person who takes their order is going to get their order wrong. Like, that's probably the worst that's going to happen for most people today.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It is. It's a great thing.
Yeah.
It's a great thing.
But with that, we have an obligation to look outside of those, walls of comfort and safety that we do have here, and realize that there are tens, hundreds of millions of people a day that wake up and might not know where that next meal is going to come from, or if they're going to have their door kicked in the middle of the night and have a hand grenade put in their hand because they want to go to school.
Right.
So.
Right. What was the repercussions with this kid in this case? I mean, how did that play out? I mean, this was after you were
correct.
You weren't there anymore.
I didn't get any follow up,
That's
but
right,
I'm assuming he threw it, so hopefully no other repercussions occurred.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still kind of surreal and unbelievable for me to even tell that story and think about the people over there. But
it just doesn't seem real, man.
Yeah, that's why I'm
it's
so thankful.
Foreign to us.
And appreciate for this opportunity because, like we were kind of talking about before this started, to have this podcast and this time to elaborate and really talk about things.
Yeah.
Here and abroad is I think beneficial for people. So.
Well, I think there's a lot of misconception. I don't know if I imagine you have criticism and hate and people who put you down or misconstrue the events and things that went down, which I actually want to get into. But that's why platforms like this are so important, so we can set the record straight and really talk about in depth the real issues, the real stories, the real things that happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're there with your guys, roughly 60 guys, and then you got pulled away into a separate area with your platoon. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
So Marines, at least at the time, we deployed for 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 months into it, when I was injured, we were obviously over the halfway point.
Yep.
And when you're looking ahead towards the end of the deployment, and what's called a RIP with another unit who's going to come in, relieve you so you can finally go home.
Sure.
You obviously want to leave things better than how you found them.
Yeah.
So, for example, say we had a 2 square mile area of operation.
Mm-hmm.
Before that next unit comes, we want to push out and make it a 3 square mile radius.
Yeah.
Therefore, continuing to not only create a greater Marine presence where there wasn't one, but continue to push those bad guys out, hopefully leading to more stability within the area.
Yeah.
So we had these 3 villages to the south of our position, not too far. I think the first one was maybe a click and a half. And so, anytime we left our 4 walls of patrol base Beatley for those first 4 months, we would get shot at.
Mm-hmm.
It was not a matter of, hey, I wonder, if we're going to get shot at or get in a firefight today. It was just a matter of when it was going to occur.
Yeah.
But anytime we went south, dude, it was like they turned up the intensity.
Really?
I mean, it was... We knew I always rolled out with 800 rounds for my saw, but like going down there, I always took like an extra drum or 2.
Is that right?
Yeah, just because not only did it get significantly worse, but the vegetation in some areas on the outskirts of those 3 villages got thicker. So like at some points, it was crazy. I felt like I was in a firefight in my backyard in the backwoods here in Gilbert.
Really?
Yeah, and so, we nicknamed them Shady, Shadier, and Shadiest.
These are the 3 villages.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
And so, looking ahead to expand that presence, my squad pushed down about a day and a half before I was injured, November 19th. And we were going to take over another compound. In the most simplistic way to put it, we were supposed to take it over and try to survive and last for 5 days with a backpack full of whatever we could stuff, our weapons, and each other.
Was 5 days when reinforcements would come in? Like,
Correct.
What was okay?
That
all right.
well, that was kind of the plan,
Right.
if you will.
Right. And take it over from the Taliban. So the Taliban has occupied this compound at this point.
They're occupying the village.
Okay.
There's actually a family in the compound.
Ah.
Strategically, it wasn't the best, but we kind of worked with what we had.
Sure.
And there was, with the combat and people knowing ahead of time that Marines were coming, we flew over before, and this is way before our deployment. We flew over, let people know, the civilian population, that we were coming. Hey, we want to give you a better life. We're coming to hopefully get rid of the Taliban. And so it's kind of like you either stay or you went. If you stayed, you kind of unfortunately knew what was coming. But we compensated the family really well. And with that said, there was a lot of other abandoned compounds. And all the compounds over there, you can look up on Google Earth.
Yeah.
They're all pretty much the same. From a bird's eye view, pretty much a perfect square.
Right.
A little room built in one of the corners where the family sleeps at night. You have all your farm animals out in the courtyard. There's no roof. It's all open. And so they're all pretty much the same. So we essentially just moved them right across the street, helped them move their stuff, compensated them very well. They'd probably be somewhat set for life. And we took it over.
I want to hold on 1 second on the compensation thing. I mean, like in physical compensation. I mean,
Money.
Because they don't have like banks or anything, right? I mean,
correct.
So they run the risk of that being stolen and taken from them. I'm sure they become a target at that point.
Yeah, man, I never actually even thought about that.
I'm just kind of curious. I'm like, whoa, I wonder if they just became. Anyways, it's just something I'm thinking about.
Well, hopefully
with your guys it's being there and your protection a little bit as well. I mean.
Yeah, and hopefully
that's crazy.
Maybe the Taliban didn't know that.
Yeah, maybe.
We were compensating people for their loss of their house or their property or whatever. But we were very respectful, did it the right way.
Sure, yeah.
And the money for them was very significant.
Yeah.
And so they bounced across the street. We took it over. And I mean, I'm talking within like the hour we moved into this compound, first grenade attack came. And, people ask me like, well, like, did y'all not see him while you were going down there? You were so surrounded. And, I mean, it was estimated a significant number of Taliban in this village and surrounding us. We had maybe 11, 12 guys at the most, with our Navy doc included. And, who knows how true this is, but it was estimated like 75 to 100 Taliban,
oh my goodness,
like within the area.
Right, that all know the area. You're completely surrounded.
Yeah, so kind of like potential suicide mission. And I knew it was bad, and I didn't put this in the book, but I knew it was bad when my staff sergeant, when we were still at our previous base before we hiked down, he was talking to our company gunny on the sat phone back behind this little tent. And he was pretty much just telling Gunny, like, hey, this is going to be bad. And this was his 9th combat deployment.
Oh, man.
And he was in Ramadi, I believe, 3 times. And he was there, as you know, when it was nicknamed the City of Darkness.
Yeah.
So he had been there and done that. And for him, unfortunately I heard him. Because for him to be wary, I mean, this dude he was a G. I mean, he would, just for fun during the day as a staff sergeant who probably should stay inside, radio communication, talking with higher ups.
Be the leader,
probably not go out. He'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to roll with y'all today. It's like, all right, well, we're going to this area. It's probably going to be bad. He's like, yeah, like, F it, let's do it. Like, awesome Marine, awesome leader. So for me to hear him say, like, hey, we need to kind of rethink this, and, this is going to be a bad one. I knew it was going to be bad. Obviously, we didn't know how bad. But, as far as getting attacked the second we moved in there. Because everything's so unconventional, no one's wearing uniforms. Everyone has little burner, prepaid cell phones.
Yeah, yeah.
So the second we walk out of our base, every step of the way down, there's a scout. There's someone calling
Telling
down to
activity
Shadier, his boys down there, hey, Marines are headed your way. So when we walked in this compound, obviously they know where we are. We're not going anywhere. We're not scared of them. We just don't know where they are.
Yeah.
And so instantly almost grenades
Lobbing grenades
over the wall of the compound. And it was so bizarre because, where we were, a lot of people I think of Afghanistan as mountains, arid, dry, rugged terrain.
Yeah.
But kind of when we went into the country, for the most part, I think the Army took kind of the northern part of the country. Marines focused more on the south. So where we were was very lush agricultural farmland. I mean, every day I had my machine gun over my head wading through sewage canals and waterways.
Oh, wow, yeah.
They obviously can't IED or booby trap those. And so, it was very almost like a mild Vietnam.
Yeah.
And so, with that said, Afghanistan, we're fighting tree line to tree line and across agricultural fields and through people's backyards, which most of the time that fighting environment, unlike Iraq, which is so urban and more house to house and street to street, to throw hand grenades, you have to get in pretty close proximity of what you can throw.
Sure.
And so when the first grenade landed, I was outside digging filling sandbags and at the same time digging a burn pit because there's no infrastructure. We just have to burn anything we go through.
Yeah.
Human waste to MRE boxes to everything. So we're digging this burn pit, filling sandbags, and just for people listening, we fill sandbags and we build them up in circles or structures on top of roofs. So whoever's on a lookout position, what we call a post position, essentially just on this elevated position with your gear on and your weapon, looking out for an attack, bad guys, making sure the Marines that are either eating, sleeping, cleaning their weapons, relaxing within the compound, who are not on lookout, are safe.
Right.
And so we're filling these sandbags and we hear something and somebody said, "Who's throwing rocks?" And then, boom, first grenade goes off. And, dude, for the next 30 hours until I was injured, or, it might not be exactly 30 hours, but roughly a day and a half, it was either grenades being lobbed over the wall or, a nonstop just, harassing AK-47 fire and small arms attack.
Jeez.
And so
were you able to engage these guys at all throughout that 30-hour time frame? Or were they so far away and knew the terrain and everything so well that it was just even difficult to engage them?
More of the latter. And, we were in this village, and what the Taliban will do is they'll bust out, crawl through size holes in walls within compounds. So they can run through.
Go in and out of compounds.
And never show themselves. And they punch out little barrel holes. And so, very cowardly, punch out these holes, never expose themselves by running through compound walls, and, more harassment because a lot of it wasn't accurate, but, essentially protecting themselves and being able to shoot at us without ever exposing themselves.
But I mean, that's what we would attempt to do too, right?
Yeah.
It's like, give yourself the best advantages possible. Like, it's hard to say because it's the enemy, but it's like, well, we would do that same thing as well.
Yeah, very true. But, to not have a uniform on and do that, and then you can literally put down your weapon after you've killed 2 Marines and walk out of this house and be like, oh, no, this fight's going on.
That's true. That's it. I agree with that. And then even using civilian population as cover, like that to me, I 100% agree with you.
Exactly. During firefights, little side story, but during firefights, I one time fighting with the Eastern Village, which was a very bad spot, I kept we kept getting rounds coming in, kept getting shot at, and finally I saw where the dust was kicking up from the rifle, the
Sure. Yeah.
AK-47. And so finally, I had this doorway this guy was in. I was looking through my ACOG. I had my saw ready to go, obviously wanting to protect the Marines around me. I think, war and hurting another human being is an absolute last resort. But if you're going to sit there and continuously shoot at us, something needs to be done.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this doorway, and, thank God I had trigger discipline and I didn't just, let him fly. Dude throws his wife, or maybe not his wife, but a female out in the doorway. Therefore, we maybe shoot her. He gets to complain about the Marines. We get in trouble.
Yeah.
We might not patrol for a few days.
Yep.
They regroup their operations, and he doesn't care about her or what
Right.
happened to her.
Right.
So you're exactly right. That's a good point. But yeah, man, we and I think I would like to say, Marines are so prepared. We, like I said, we weren't scared. It was just I think we went down there with an inadequate number of Marines and external support.
Right.
And
Sounds like it.
And there was just so many bad guys. And the walls of these compounds are 10, 12, maybe 15 feet high.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we were so limited, we couldn't really even send out a for real official full 12-man patrol because that's all we had. We wouldn't have been able to man the base.
Right.
So, we would send out like a fire team, four Marines or so,
okay.
just in the immediate perimeter. But, our mission wasn't to go down there and secure the whole village. We were just there to set our foot in the ground, establish that presence, and try to survive and take care of each other until that help arrived.
Crazy. Were you prepared to die at that point? Like, had you I don't want to say the word resigned because obviously you're still fighting, but had you just accepted that may be the fate of you and your guys?
I think if I would have day one been inserted into that scenario,
Mm-hmm.
I think you, as a young Marine and all the training and everything you've been through, going into a deployment like that, you obviously don't know what to expect. I think maybe if you really looked inside yourself, maybe you were willing, accepting of dying, or maybe you weren't. But after 4 months of being there, and every single night laying my head down on my pillow and thinking, man, there's a good chance this is the last night I'm ever going to lay my head down and go to sleep on this earth. Once you have day in and day out, every single day of that, I think you just become more accepting of the potential consequences.
Right.
And, I think with the training, the history we get taught, and all of these things, I think in a good way, you kind of feel invincible up until the point something does happen. And, you're in such a surreal environment. It's like, yesterday I saw my buddy get shot in the leg. Thankfully, he made it. November 9th, the worst day on my deployment. Like my squad leader, who I was on patrol with, stepped on IED. Immediate double amputee. 8 hours later that night, one of my best friends, Dakota Hughes, middle of the night, stepped on a massive IED that rocked our compound almost a mile away that I was sitting in on radio watch, listening to the radio transmission of them trying to find pieces and parts of his body. So with things like that happening, it's kind of like, yes, I know I'm here. Yes, I know the consequences. But until you take that round or you step on that IED or something happens directly to you, it's not that you think, this is not going to happen to me. It's just, it's almost too crazy and surreal to comprehend.
I imagine the mind, this is a defense mechanism in a way, because if that's
Yes,
all you thought about, you wouldn't be able to do your job.
absolutely. It would
I
be
mean,
mentally crippling.
it would you're in a horrific environment. Your brothers are being injured and being killed around you.
Hmm.
And if that's what you're thinking about, forget about the mission. You're useless at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
But yeah, defense mechanism, that's a great way to think about it and look at it. And, another example of just how crazy it is, which is a chapter in the book, but I talk about my 21st birthday, and it was the worst firefight of our whole deployment. And I just remember, it was hours and hours of fighting, and it was when we got caught up in the woods fighting through, those tree lines. And I remember we were crawling through a field, straight up, low crawling on our chest and knees. I had my saw over my shoulder with the barrel up to not get it dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Grabbing this arm, pulling myself through this field. And on the sides of all their agricultural fields, there's what's known as goat paths.
Okay.
And it's paths that the local populations take their farm animals on. Therefore, you don't have to walk straight through the middle of your field, potentially damaging your
Ruining
crops.
your crop, right?
So these paths, crisscross the entire landscape over there.
Hmm.
So a lot of times that creates a defilade, which is, for people listening, if there is, a berm or a hill and you're on one side of it, if whatever you're shooting at is on the other side and lower than that embankment, unless you're miles away and you
Right.
somehow
You're not gonna
curve
see
your
'em.
round down, you're not going to see them and you can't hit them. So we were in this defilade crawling through this field, and I just had this like crazy moment where I was like, happy birthday to me. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to enjoy my first legal beer, But
That's
even then,
crazy.
my emotion didn't change from having that thought to before I had that thought or after. It was just kind of like, oh, like that's an interesting fact. It's hard to explain, but I think just the best way to put it is it's so surreal, and the things that are happening to the people around you are so surreal. And just take that away, how you see the local population and how those people live and have lived forever, and hopefully not, but maybe will continue living like that. It's all just so crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like there's definitely a level of detachment in that situation so that you can still perform and do what you need to do.
Yes.
Yeah. So take me then to the day that you got injured. So you're in the compound,
Correct.
and you are in a not a patrol situation, but a post position. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Myself and a fellow Marine, best friend, one of the most amazing Marines I've ever had the privilege of serving with, Lance Corporal Nick Euphrasio. We were, because we were on the same roof together, inside the same enclosed circle sandbag position together, because the day before, when I was on post on the other roof, so those two roofs in this compound, one was the roof above the room where the family slept.
Okay.
It was in one corner.
All right.
The other corner, which most of the compounds over there have, it'll have a little room. And that's where, after they harvest their crops / drugs from the field, they shove them all in there and kind of let them dry out before they can process and do whatever they do with them. I was on that roof the day before, and I was building this sandbag position. So we were going to have two roofs, a circle of sandbags on each one. That way, obviously, two sets of eyes and two Marines looking, almost covering the full field of visual around this compound. I was on that post. I was building up the sandbags, and I started getting shot at by a sniper.
Mm-hmm.
Now, usually, one, we rarely saw snipers. And two, with not only how old and probably beat up their weapons are, they were not good marksmen to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But what the Taliban will do in the intel we got is they will recruit from other nations that hate the West and the United States of
Really?
America, and they will recruit them to fill the gap of their deficiencies in fighting.
Yeah.
And so we think it was, Chechnyan snipers that had come into our area of operation to support their operations, and this guy was on it.
Really?
Thankfully, he didn't start shooting at me until I had got, I believe, 3 sandbags high of a semicircle built around me.
So you could get low enough.
Correct.
Okay.
If I laid on my chest, all the way down on the ground, up against the sandbags, I couldn't get hit. But with that said, I can still feel it right now. It was so eerie because I was, I was laying on my side with my back up against the sandbags.
Okay.
Because the very rare chance a round made it through, I'm more covered with my front and back sappy armor plates.
Sure, than the sides.
Right.
And,
God forbid that 1% chance that a round came in and went under my arm or hit my lungs. That's a whole separate issue.
Yeah.
And so I remember laying with my back up against these sandbags, and when he fired, I could feel the impact and the thud of the round up against the sandbags transferring into the back of my back. So just kind of closing my eyes, squinting like, oh man, is this even real? Going back to it being so surreal.
Yeah.
But I caught on very quickly that it was a single bolt action rifle, so I knew I had a second or two. Yeah. So my buddies were just tossing sandbags up on the roof. I would grab them, pull them over to me. After he shot, I would stack another one. Because, yes, maybe a stupid decision, but we had to get that post built because there had to be a Marine up there for those more eyes.
Right.
That would have been a huge gap in our field of visual. And so I got this wall built. Well, it was getting close to sundown. And over there, they know that we have night vision capabilities. So very, very rarely, if ever, do they mess with you at night. So we knew that we would have some calm to keep building this post up once the sun went down.
Yeah.
So Staff Sergeant Kroll, my staff sergeant I was talking about that I heard on the sat phone, he came over. And, of course, he's messing with me. I'm getting shot at, and he's like, oh, yeah, how's the sun tanning going up there? I'm like, all right, dude.
It seems like you'd have to, though. Like, you'd have to make light of it in a way. And I think that's why a lot of military guys, they have kind of a dark, twisted humor because, well, I mean, you're seeing some crazy stuff, and that's, again, a defense mechanism, right? That's a way to, like, to take some of the pain off or whatever it might
just
be.
Get through it.
Right.
And so, after he kind of jokes with me, he's like, come on, Carpenter, like, get down when you can. We'll finish building this in the next couple hours. So I grab my saw, wait for the next shot, jump off the roof. 45 seconds to a minute later, a rocket comes in and not only vaporizes every sandbag that I had been working on, but it damages the roof so bad that later that night it collapsed.
Oh my!
So we're down to one roof, one post. So my November 21st, 2010, myself and my fellow Marine, we were we did 4-hour shifts at a time. We were at the very end of our shift. I mean, one guy was about to start climbing up the shaky bamboo ladder to us. Other guy was throwing on his gear. And Taliban initiated a daylight attack. They threw 4 grenades. The 4th one hitting us. The 3rd one was a dud. It didn't go off. And then the other 2 blew up within the courtyard of the compound.
Right.
And, not to mention the day before, we had 2 Marines and one of the few Afghan National Army members that were with us down there. All 3, right off the bat, 3 down from the bodies that we had, all injured by hand grenades.
Oh, man.
So fast forward, November 21st, we're up there. We're at the very end of our shift, and this attack occurs, and the fourth one lands, and I don't remember this. Everything is from a very extensive 2-year long, 252-page investigation done by the military. But the grenade lands in very close proximity to us. I don't remember anything really from the whole day before. The only thing I remember from the entire day is about 7:45. Our alarm clock, as usual, was us getting attacked by AK-47s. I remember rolling over, unzipping my sleeping bag, throwing it off of me, and kind of thinking, "Here we go, another day in Afghanistan." That's the only thing I remember until the grenade went off. And at that, from the whole day, pretty much, I only remember physically how I felt after that grenade exploded. And I remember I didn't know what happened, but I felt like I got hit really hard in the face.
When was this was this after it had happened that you woke up and came to?
Yes.
And that's what you're experiencing now. Okay.
Body still smoking on the roof when they
God.
rolled me over. And
you're aware and awake at that point.
Yeah, I couldn't see anything. My vision was like looking at a TV with no connection. It was just white and gray static. My ears, just like they are right now, were ringing extremely loudly. And so I was just so disoriented. And I not only felt like I got hit really hard in the face, but I was trying to kind of like push myself up and kind of shake it off.
Yeah.
But I couldn't feel my arms. And that's when I was like, oh man, like this is not good. So as I was thinking about it, and it's kind of crazy I even had the wherewithal to try to put the pieces together in my head. But I was thinking, okay, the last thing I remember, I was on a roof. But what could have possibly injured me this bad on a roof? Like I clearly didn't get shot. There's not an IED planted in this roof.
Right.
Maybe I got off the roof, went on a foot patrol, stepped on an IED, and just the last thing I can remember is being on the roof.
That's got to be so weird, not
so
knowing
weird. So
what is
weird.
going on. Like the worst thing I can think of in this context is you go on vacation, you wake up, and you don't know where you are because you're in a new bed.
Yeah.
And I'm not comparing the two at all.
No, but
that's the only frame of reference I would have for
yeah,
what you're experiencing
yeah.
at this point.
And I'm just like, what is going on? And so then as I'm trying to put the pieces together, and this just alludes to Marines' humor and us messing with each other, but then my thoughts of trying to put things together was interrupted by what I thought was warm water being poured over me. I'm like,
somebody's messing
come on,
with you.
guys! Like even in this messed up, banged up state, you're still messing with me. But unfortunately, that was very quickly interrupted by the surreal realization that it wasn't water, it was blood, and I was bleeding out profusely over my whole body. And so at that moment, I realized I don't know what happened, but I am seriously injured. And just from what I had seen on that deployment so far, our medical training and everything we have been through, I knew I was in bad shape and my time was probably limited. So I used my last few seconds to, I thought about my family and how devastated my mom was going to be that I didn't make it home like I said I would. And then my next thought was I said a quick prayer for forgiveness and anything I had done wrong or, lived wrong in my life. And, dude, a tiredness consumed me, like one I can't even describe. It was like to the center of my stomach, like the core of me. I was just so exhausted. When you're exhausted at home in front of the TV, you kind of wake up. If you really have to do something, you can like kind of snap out of it. But it was just like consuming every fiber in me. And at that point, I knew what was coming, and I closed my eyes for what I thought was going to be my last time on this earth, and went unconscious on a hot, dusty rooftop in Afghanistan. And I woke up 5 weeks later to opening my eye that I had left and seeing 5 red Christmas stockings hanging on my hospital room wall with snow building on my window pane. You know, my mom had decorated my hospital room for the holidays.
5 weeks.
I woke up one time before the time that I really woke up, and I talk about this extensively in the book because it was the worst point of my recovery. But I had either come out of a brain surgery or was going into one, and you know, my parents were good until that point because they're thinking, you know, no matter what physically, we can heal him, we can be there for him, we can get him back.
Yeah.
But when I lost my mind and started hallucinating, when they kind of brought me off the medication to see where I was mentally at, do everything from crashing a plane into Turner Field, where I'd grown up going to baseball games, giant spiders attacking my hospital room wall, the Taliban infiltrating the hospital, my dad. I mean, and all this stuff is just as real as us sitting here and me touching this table. I thought, like, because, you know, a young Lance Corporal, especially in my disoriented, banged up state, like, we don't really know there's military medicine to begin with. You know, we know the doc and the corpsman and maybe like the battalion surgeon, but I didn't know there was a Walter Reed. I didn't know there was some of the best doctors in the whole world that were going to save my life wearing camis
Right.
and not white doctor coats, which I had always known. So I was so disoriented. But in my banged up, medicated state, when they brought me out of this and I had these hallucinations, you know, with not knowing about military health care, you know, I didn't know if my parents were having to pay for everything. And so I was so worried, even though I was on a trach, something was breathing for me, I had a million tubes everywhere, and I couldn't express anything or do anything. I was so worried that my parents, you know, I hallucinated that they sold their home, all the cars, they got rid of everything, and they just like couldn't pay for anything anymore. And so my dad, I don't know if anybody's ever seen the movie John Q, but like my dad, in an attempt to save me and get what I needed, I'm laying in the bed, and when I really woke up, it was crazy because the room that I was actually in looked nothing like the room that I was manifesting in my hallucinations.
Oh, really?
But I remember looking over, and my dad was coming through with just a look of despair and anger on his face, charging through the sliding doors of the ER with shotgun in hand, demanding that I get this life-saving surgery that I needed. And dude, SWAT came in and blew him to a million pieces right there in front of me. I even heard, they were so real, I even heard the shotgun like clink against the floor when they shot him and he fell. And like just so bizarre stuff like that. But the one that pretty much the only point that I really got choked up writing the book, and that was really hard for me to write, and I still get emotional talking about it right now, is one of the hallucinations I had. I was standing on this hill, and there was like a massive field around me, and I could see down into this valley, and there was a funeral going on. And all you could see was like the burial hole, and then the preacher or the religious person, you know, reading out of the Bible and performing this funeral with no one there but him. And I couldn't move, my feet were stuck, and I was just watching, and like the sky was super gray. It was just super eerie, really eerie. You couldn't see anything, there wasn't trees or anything for miles, just this field. And there was one big tree right behind me. So I'm looking and watching and thinking, like, what am I doing here? You know, like, what is this? And I finally realized that it was my funeral. And I was watching my own funeral, and no one came. And none of my buddies came because they were so mad at me and disappointed that I left them early in Afghanistan. But as hard as that was, I'm so thankful for it. And sorry, I know I'm going off on a little tangent, but
No, this is
that
important.
that is a lesson that's always stuck with me. You know, even though I had no control over that, and I know that was, you know, completely just a hallucination. You know, what are you doing day to day and throughout your life to make an impact, to love and to take care of others. So, pretty much like I viewed that as a very difficult lesson on, what do I want my legacy to be?
Mm.
So,
What do you want your legacy to be?
well, hopefully someone shows up at my funeral.
You might have a couple people there.
No, man, I want to strive every day to be a good person, to impact people and help people in a positive way. And, when I'm gone, for people to miss me. And I think ultimately just look at my life and hopefully learn from it and them think, that was a life well lived.
Hmm.
But, so 5 weeks.
When they did the investigation,
Mhm.
you said that was a 2-year investigation, if I remember correctly.
Correct. I don't know the exact time, but I know that it was not only that length, but hundreds of pages long.
That's great. Did they ever disclose or have any idea of what type of proximity you were to that grenade when it went off? Were you on top of it? Were you within a few feet? Like at what distance did you take that blast?
So, because we were on a roof, it posed a challenge to get, numerous eyewitnesses that saw every inch of my action.
Right.
But there were eyewitnesses, gave their statement not only during that deployment, after they got back, and then all my buddies who were there and not injured and still in the Marine Corps, when they went back to the exact same area in Marja, exact same patrol base, 7-8 months later, after they had come home, had some R&R, bounced back on their second deployment, they were rounded up again, taken by armored convoy to the same compound, given their statements again. So the eyewitness statements, very thorough, and multiple of those. But one of the main parts of the investigation and that supplemented, I believe, me receiving the Medal of Honor was the forensic blast analysis that they brought this expert, from high ranking to low ranking EOD, which is Explosive Ordnance Disposal Marines.
Mm-hmm.
They brought them in to examine the roof, the seat of the blast, my gear, everything. So they come in. My body armor is completely vaporized.
Oh, I'm sure.
My tourniquet, which you know how durable a tourniquet is melted onto my plate carrier.
Oh, wow.
The M4 that I was holding was torn apart, split apart in 100 pieces, like a hot knife going through butter. That's thick steel.
Oh, yeah.
So that was completely vaporized. And then when they found me and got up to me on the roof, I was face down in essentially a small crater that the blast had kind of broken up the integrity of the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Sunk down in this crater face first. And they actually passed me up at first because they just assumed that I was dead and they were going to focus on Nick, then get us both off of the roof. When they rolled me over and I was struggling to breathe and moaning, they said I was still smoking, like straight off of a barbecue. But with all of that said, so, with physics, everything mostly, I believe in life, takes the path of least resistance. So, if I threw a grenade right here on the ground, carpet might be a little burned, there might be a little spot, but that blast is going to go up because nothing is hindering it.
Yeah.
But, which you can still see this on Google Earth, it's in the book, one of the pictures I put, but the way they knew I was on top of it is because the seat of the blast, the grenade, when it was sandwiched between the weight of my body, backed by a protective plate of armor, my vest, when that sandwich, that grenade in between the roof, that grenade, these compounds and these villages have been there for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And so that roof had, it's very strong mud, but at the same time, my body weight in that armor was stronger than the roof itself. So the grenade blew a hole down through the roof, which is what I'm saying. You can still see on Google Earth this hole. And so, and I've talked to the post-blast analysis team since, because, it's kind of crazy for all of this stuff to happen in my life, the medal in front of the country, all this stuff, and I can't remember it.
Right.
And so not doubting what happened, but just talking to them and saying, hey, give me your firsthand account and tell me how confident you are in everything you looked at. And they just said, dude, it was hard to see, but it was so incredible, because that physically just, there's no way that could have ever possibly happened if your weight and body armor hadn't sandwiched it and blew it down through the roof. And so that was the forensic piece of evidence that fit into the investigation. So, unfortunately, I don't remember doing it, but from all of that investigation, eyewitness accounts, that team and their report, yes, I covered the grenade that was thrown at me and my fellow Marine.
Is that frustrating to you that you can't remember that, or are you glad that you can't remember?
So it used to frustrate me, and not that I was super fixated on it, but I did, think about it all the time. Obviously I got very hurt, but it's all of this just insane, out of this world stuff is happening in my life. People from the Pentagon are calling me. Fast forward a couple of years, the president called me, and all this stuff happened, and it's my life, and I can't even remember it. And not only can I remember that, I can't remember 5 weeks following that. So I used to get a little frustrated, but, thinking about it, because I like to take time to really think deeply about things. And thinking about it, I realized, how crazy I was for even caring or being frustrated at that. I'm just thankful to be alive, and I'm thankful to still be here. And, they all did their jobs. It happened the way it happened. And I'm still in shock, but I'm just so thankful that I even woke up and I had this, bonus round at life that I'm living now.
That's an interesting way to look at it, your bonus round. That's interesting. What were the extent of your injuries?
So, still have some, but I had more shrapnel in my brain.
There's still pieces there?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they'll always be there?
They'll always be there, yeah. And, they take out the pieces that they can, that they're confident that they won't cause any more damage.
Sure.
But obviously the brain, especially the frontal lobe, is very delicate, and you never know how it's going to react. So some of them, if I was doing okay up to that point and still hanging on, they kind of removed what they could.
Right.
And then left the pieces that might have caused more harm than good.
Sure.
So shrapnel in my brain, both eardrums were blown out. The right was significantly worse. That needed surgical repair. The left, if you do blow your eardrums and it's not really bad, the body will kind of repair itself on its own. But I had to have a full repair on my right. I had a hole blown through my carotid from a piece of shrapnel, so I had to get that patched. Most of my time at Walter Reed and my reconstruction and most of my surgeries were from facial and oral reconstruction. The grenade blew most of my teeth out. It completely blew my entire lower jaw off. They said it was kind of resting on my shoulder. Keep going down. My arms were severely damaged. My right more than my left. My right had 30 fractures. Both arms have significant nerve damage. I had a fully collapsed right lung, a partially collapsed left lung. Thankfully, surprisingly, no more internal injuries besides my collapsed lung.
That's amazing.
And they think, surprise, surprise, that my right lung was fully collapsed because that kind of in the upper right quadrant is where, that grenade was sandwiched in between the roof. And so, but then, everything else was just like tissue damage on my legs and stuff like that. So, waist down, I was good. And in hindsight, I'm so thankful for that. Obviously, the less injuries, the better. But since my legs were good, it allowed me to start standing up, to walking, and getting moving, which I think drastically expedited my upper body
Oh,
healing.
I imagine even just the morale of being able to get up and get moving, I'm
Absolutely.
sure was there too.
Which was a very long and difficult road just to even sit up in the bed. But once I got to a point, where I could stand, now looking back, I'm so thankful that my legs were left okay, because it would have been, I mean, the amputees and the guys that I recover with are just, they're superhuman, and they
Amazing
inspire me every
people.
day. So I could have done it, but it just would have been, that much more of a challenge.
How did you not die? I mean, I don't know how to word that. Like how are you not dead?
That is the $1,000,000 question. Um, After everything that happened, and the way my life continues to pan out, I definitely have way less answers than more. But I and can, I'm continually shown more and more examples of, you know, maybe there really is a bigger plan for me, and that I need to be here, and I might not know exactly what I'm doing, but that's okay. I'm still here, and I'm trying to help people one day at a time. So, I believe that God and a higher power helped me in that moment of my journey, because you're right, I don't know how physically a human body could go through half of that and not only survive but wake up halfway okay. And then, the other side of it is, from the moment I was hit, regardless of if they were getting shot at, if more grenades were being thrown, my fellow Marines, Lance Corporal Jared Lilly, first one to me, my Navy corpsman, Doc Friend, they ran up barely having time to throw their gear on,
Hmm.
and immediately not only got me off the roof, but all the Marines I was with, pretty much started an assembly line of combat gauze and trying to stop that bleeding, and did everything they could to keep me alive. And, you know, not only those first ones on the ground, which I wouldn't have even made it the 12 minutes for the medevac to arrive if it wasn't for them, but then this medevac helicopter, Air Force pararescue jumpers, badasses. They, are in this safe aircraft flying back to base. They get a call. They have, one extra spot left on the bird with not a casualty in it. They can afford to pick me up. They just happen to be flying by in that time frame.
Hmm.
They choose to turn around, fly directly into one of the worst battles, because after, as the medevac came and after we left, a terrible firefight ensued. But they flew into the heart of battle and darkness and risked their lives, not making it back to their families, and they didn't care anything else but in that moment getting to those two injured Marines. They flew down, They landed and they didn't move an inch until I was loaded on board and taken care of and in their hands. My buddies handed me off to them. They've told me since. They told me they loved me. They didn't think they were going to see me again. They told me bye. And they got me to the hospital, and they were handing me off to the hospital staff at that first base there exactly 30 minutes after they picked me up. And then you go from...
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Jeez.
In the middle of nowhere, Afghanistan. Picked me
right.
up in 12 minutes, and you have me to the hospital in 30 minutes. And not only that, then you go through all 3 combat trauma hospitals I went through. 3 hospitals in Afghanistan, then to Germany, where they kept me alive for 3 days. They caught, out of all the stuff I had going on, they discovered a small blood clot in my left leg, my left calf. So they didn't fly me home because of the altitude and pressure change could have knocked that blood clot loose.
Oh, yeah.
They keep me alive. They put me on this C-130 flying hospital, pretty much,
Yeah.
airplane. You know, myself, I think there was around maybe 50 other, casualties on there, all differing in severity. Some are ambulatory and can just walk on the plane. And then the 2 worst ones that were injured, myself and a soldier, an Army guy named Ryan Craig, took a direct shot straight into the head by a sniper up in the mountains of Afghanistan. And we were the 2 worst injured ones, and they put us on this plane. We have a nurse and doctor team individually, each of us, that are
Really?
only there to fly the 8 hours and keep us alive to DC.
Oh, wow.
So me and Ryan were there, 2 worst injured ones, and not comparing, but I'm just saying they kept us alive. They got us to DC. The police escort, ready to go. They loaded us on the back of an 18-wheeler that has been retrofitted as a 18-wheeler moving hospital that transfers you from the plane straight off the runway to Walter Reed, through the gates of Walter Reed. The cops that, sped forward, stopped traffic, got this 18-wheeler there. And then the journey really just began when I got to Walter Reed and the 3 years of surgeries. All the corpsmen and the medics and all of them at Walter Reed that sat with me through the darkest, longest hours of the night with no lights on, just sitting there to themselves on a one-to-one with me to make sure if I coded in the middle of the night that there wouldn't be a 5-second delay in somebody getting to my room. Just to literally sit there and watch me. My therapist, the nonprofits, that stepped in and helped my family and became friends with my family before I even woke up. So just, it started on the battlefield, but I am where I am and who I am because of so many incredible people that the reason I joined, they're serving a greater purpose and something other than themselves or one individual. And so I have chills right now. I mean, all those people not even knowing me or not even knowing if I was going to survive did all of that to just keep, little Lance Corporal Carpenter, alive. And it's been such a journey. Good, bad, extremely hard, extremely amazing. It's just, it's kind of hard to convey, honestly.
Yeah, I imagine. What are your goals and ambitions with your bonus round?
Well, kind of looking ahead towards the short term, I want to continue making my book that I worked so hard on to perfect, making that a priority and pushing that because, I had to recover, get on with my life, become financially independent, way before the medal occurred. I was in the middle of my sophomore year at the University of South Carolina when I got the call from the president and I found out I was going to be awarded the Medal of Honor.
Yeah, was it 4 years? Is that the timeline? Four
Correct.
years from that date? that you found out or were
Got injured
awarded?
in November, and I received the medal in June of 2014.
Okay.
But, with all of that said, I'm so thankful the chips fell the way they did and the timeline worked out the way it did because, I'm not financially motivated. I know selling copies comes with a good book that you want people to read,
Sure.
but I truly just wrote it to help people and to take all the silver linings and the perspective through the good, bad, and ugly, the lessons I learned through those long, dark, hard nights, and convert them into a terminology and lessons that anyone and everyone can understand. So in the short term, I want to, through my speaking that I've already done, I've been doing, and now this book, continue to hopefully impact and connect with people. And I think in the long run, I'm not exactly sure. My journey has been interesting to say the least, and many giant and unexpected turns. But, a very low point for me that I discuss in the book, I came to a point where I realized, okay, I might not know where I'm headed, what I'm doing. I might not even know what 12 hours from now holds. But, I got kind of into this routine of telling myself every day, I might not know what I'm doing, but if I work hard, treat people right, try to do the right thing, and just keep taking, that one small step, one after the other, I can't go wrong, and it's got to take me somewhere. And so I've kind of just stuck to that, and I kind of take things as they come and just go with the flow and try to do the best with what I have. But, like I was saying, when it's all said and done, I just want for myself to live a life well lived, and for others to look at my life as not an example of how to be a good person or a hard worker or anything like that, because I would be the last person to, claim I'm those things. But, and tying in with the book, take me and my story, my name, the Marine Corps, anything you want that defines my story, take it away. With my life and with this book, what I want is people to just see, realize, and understand what the human spirit can go through and how hard you can get knocked down, and you truly can come back better and stronger. Now, you might be a little different physically, mentally, or emotionally, and that's absolutely okay. But that you can truly come back better and stronger than you were before whatever it was that knocked you down. So I can't believe like some of the things that I've been through and gone through, and it's still very surreal. But at the same time, I have surprised myself, when I crossed the finish line of that marathon with tears in my eyes, because, when I couldn't even sit up in the bed, I had that goal. And yeah, it's amazing to do a marathon, and that's crazy. But to set that goal in the worst shape of my life, mentally and physically and emotionally, breathing through a tube, my dad's having to hold a bedpan under me while 6 to 8 people held, medical staff held all my tubes so I could lift up and go to the bathroom. Like from that to crossing the finish line of a marathon, take me out of it, people. Just look at, what you can make it through and what you can survive, and not only survive, but come through, maybe change, but still smiling on the other side.
It's powerful, man. I know you're going to change people's lives. I know you're going to inspire. You're inspiring me right now, and the people who are listening, I know, are inspired.
Thanks, man.
I want to ask you a couple of questions as we wind down. The first one is, what does it mean to be a man?
What does it mean to be a man? I think what it means to be a man is being true to yourself. And I think if you're true to yourself, that obviously being true to yourself, understanding your faults, being able to work on those, and always striving to be better, not only for yourself, but equally as much for those around you. I can't even imagine, I can only, see how my dad and my parents were, throughout my life. I can't even speak for or imagine, the depth that continues to go when you have a family of your own. But for me right now, being true to myself and always striving to sharpen my own blade, whether that is working to be, more honest, more humble, working to appreciate people more, to, not walk past an opportunity to help someone or be kind to someone. That's a really great question, man, but I think it really starts with looking at yourself in the mirror, cutting out the noise, and really thinking, what is going to enrich and better my life, and how am I going to be better for other people in a non-tangible way.
I love it. I love it. It's powerful. All right, brother. How do we pick up a copy of the book? How do we connect with you? Where do we go?
So all major platforms, HarperCollins, who's my publisher, you can get it from their website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and if you don't feel like reading it, I think you're missing out a little bit, but if you don't feel like reading it,
Missing out a lot.
I actually read the audiobook, so
Nice.
you can pick that up as well. If you have a Kindle, or even, your iPhone with iBooks on it, you can get it anywhere, but it'll be out October 15th. And if you don't like it, just don't give me a review.
That's right. You will like it, though. I can guarantee that. I'm looking at the time here. We've gone for almost 2 hours.
Nice.
I think this is the longest podcast officially that I've ever done.
Well, thank you very much.
But I wanted it to be that because I'm inspired by who you are and your story. And I don't even like saying your story, your life, your experiences. I'm inspired by who you are, what you've done. I thank you for your service to the country, to your brothers there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just taking time to share something very personal and in a lot of ways very challenging, I imagine, for you as well. So I just want to let you know I really appreciate you and, of course, your friendship as well.
Thank you very much, Ryan. It's been a pleasure, and I'm again, thank you for this opportunity. And we've only met recently, so I look forward to many more.
We're going to get you up to Maine.
Yeah, get up to Maine and many more epic adventures.
Absolutely.
All right, brother.
Thanks,
Thank
brother.
you.